What's up, gamers? It's your boys. Connor Murphy is over there looking at me kind of weird.
Why'd you use my full government name?
I don't know, but it's kind of funny. Connor Raymond Murphy.
Spelled
No.
with an E.
That is
Not in the first minute, Connor. Come on.
that is Connor Murphy. He lives at 1251 Arroyo Vista, Cedar Park, Texas 78641. His social security number is.
Beep.
Oh, it's already been leaked. Don't worry.
What do you mean it's already been leaked?
Anyways, we're back, gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Hit Play Podcast. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time with us, today is a fun one. We are doing Borderlands 2. Just kidding. We are doing a quick little pod on. We're actually doing a review of our Borderlands review.
I don't think Connor was on his A game today.
The
How do you think you guys did?
the re-review, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here because we're going to talk about books, and specifically books that get turned into movies, which is quite a lot. Actually, I was thinking about it like an hour ahead.
As we were setting up, we were even talking about it. We were like, "Wow, a lot of these books have movies."
Yeah.
We did a lot of prep work, is what we want to say.
For once,
In my defense, I only read a book if it's getting turned into a movie, so I have that
you can read.
sometimes when I feel like it, in Spanish.
A lot
Some
of
days.
good books in Spanish.
James
true.
James would know.
I'm just saying.
James is like, actually, there's a little-known Spanish author that
Yeah.
he's got one of the greatest works of all time.
But yeah, book adaptations,
yes.
gentlemen. Me and James did one a long time ago in the early days of this podcast. Please do not go watch that video. It is terrible.
It probably doesn't even
but
have
it is
video.
still there. If you just want to have a time capsule of how bad we were at this before.
Yeah, we'll delete all those eventually.
No, you got to keep.
No,
the
we have to
history.
keep 'em.
No.
I do like how every time we want to tell people, go watch this older episode, we always preface it with, like, don't watch anything
doing.
prior to, like, and the episode gets progressively more recent every single time.
Yeah.
I think for me right now, it's probably at the Nolan one we did last year.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Maybe like the Greta Gerwig one, around that time.
That was before the Kingdom Hearts pod. That was a good episode.
I wasn't a part of it.
That was after. I mean, yeah, whatever.
Anyway,
That's why it was a good episode.
so books. You guys like them?
I do my best.
All right, guys. See you later.
So I have a specific one to talk about.
Okay. Uh-oh.
All right, what do you
Wait, is it... Can I guess the author? Does his name start with a C?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah. You thought he was opening with Blood Meridian. Yeah.
We'll get to Blood
It's
Meridian
Kobe
eventually.
Bryant, ISO. Like,
Yeah.
let me talk about Cormac McCarthy for 35 minutes.
But no, there's this comic book, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. It's one of my favorite comic books, like within the last maybe 5 years or so.
Okay.
It is a fantastic story. I've made almost everyone I know who loves comics read it because I love it so much. Not everybody has loved it as much as I have, but I think
Yeah.
it's an amazing, incredible story. And it's getting a adaptation under James Gunn's new leadership of the DC Universe, which I am hesitantly excited for. I have, in the time that I have been a comic book fan, I have avoided comic book movies for the most part, mostly because my taste in comics doesn't automatically line up with my taste in superhero films, or at least just my
Yeah.
taste in cinema in general.
Yep.
Not that I haven't enjoyed superhero movies in the past, notably Infinity
The
War.
Marvels.
Yeah. Well, Infinity War was one of my favorites, like just across the board. But I also was mostly a DC fan for the most part.
Big fan of Thor, Love and Thunder.
I can't tell if you're trying to make a bit or not.
He liked the thunder parts. But I am actually worried. I haven't been worried about an adaptation or just like a word for a film in a very, 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 very long time. The last time I think
Yep.
that I was actually worried for an adaptation was way, way, way back when I was in elementary school, when the Spiderwick Chronicles was going to get adapted into a film.
Dude, imagine being a kid and being like, I'm worried that this film is going to be bad. I
I was.
James Harding activities.
that explains a lot, bro.
What do you mean? No, I had read all of the books,
Yeah.
and like right when I finished that series, they like dropped the trailer for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not gonna be good
With
at
that
all.
kid who played the
Charlie from the Chocolate
yeah.
Factory. Yeah.
Ooh, never,
Freddie.
Okay, I see the problem. Yeah.
It's Freddie something. He's also the good doctor.
I don't remember his last name, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's not a bad actor, I think.
No.
I mean, The Good Doctor is a popular TV show.
I am a surgeon.
I
am a surgeon.
Really should make fun of that. Isn't he autistic?
It's a funny part.
What do you think we are? So I'm actually like
True.
worried that this movie is not going to do justice to this book that I love so much.
Justice.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way because it's James Gunn, or do you feel that way because it's DC, or do you feel that way just because of the source material?
It's because of the source material.
Okay.
I think the story rides such a thin line between heroism and like a flat static character who does basically like no change throughout the course of the novel,
Sounds like Superman.
which is just how superheroes work in general. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
most
most-
writers acknowledge that superheroes as like a genre are full of just static characters. But this the book specifically uses one of my favorite tropes of all time, which on TV tropes is called heroic blue screen of death, which is like the idea of taking a heroic character and forcing them to continually make heroic decisions that like harm them and like make matters worse for them
Yeah.
as the story goes on, which is such an incredibly cool concept in my opinion, even though it's depressing as hell.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the book like has probably two of the saddest issues I have ever read. One chapter is a retelling of the fall of Krypton, but from Supergirl's perspective, and it is like the most heartbreaking individual like issue of a comic book I've read in so long.
Yikes.
But it is so incredibly like emotionally potent that I know it works in the book. I haven't really seen a superhero movie tackle like
Those kind of heavy themes.
yeah. For the most part, even you think of like Civil War that tried to give it like a political spin
Yeah.
to how superheroes
This
operate.
is 007.
Yeah, it's like they just kind of hand wave the actual trauma behind these characters for the most part. And I think that this book deals with that wonderfully. I can see in my head all the ways that they can misread the book and misinterpret it into film, especially because there are individual panels that are like they tell the story just through the artwork alone that I'm not certain you would really be able to communicate in film where you're having moving pictures. So that's just one thing for me where I'm like, and that's the one that's going to come out a lot more recent because like with Blood Meridian, that's just like that's a
confusing.
crapshoot. Yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna
If
be.
it even happens.
yeah, that
There's-
doesn't have to.
Sound off in the comments if you've read Blood Meridian.
I don't feel like there's any way that the Blood Meridian adaptation is gonna be good.
Did you finish it?
Yes,
You finished it.
I read the
Okay.
whole damn thing.
Okay.
I've
I got to
also
page
finished-
56.
Yeah. Do I remember a lot of it? No.
You probably remember some of the violent scenes.
I remember stuff that I think James wants me to remember, and that's about it.
Yeah. I think the thing with Blood Meridian is that I think it can be adapted. The issue is that so much of its story is told through setting and atmosphere
Yeah.
that if you just do a basic plot retelling, you would miss like the entire point of the book.
That's kind of what I was saying. Like I think like it's very easy to misinterpret all of it, and I feel like they're just gonna like like unless you have somebody who really really likes this book, a movie adaptation, it's just automatically screwed. You're just
The-
gonna miss so much.
The other thing with Blood Meridian that's really interesting too is that there are entire sections and chapters of the book that are references to other literary material, be it in the Bible or like Paradise Lost or Moby Dick specifically, that you can still recreate those in movies, but that's not going to translate in a film that
Yeah.
it's a reference to, say, this epic poem or this other book.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Would you have to do like redo that scene, but it's a reference to another film instead in place of it. Like,
They reference the Moby Dick movie.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
it's like, I don't know. That would be that's an interesting little. That's just how my brain thinks
Turns
about
into the
this kind of
searchers
problems.
like halfway through.
Yeah.
Old Yeller.
Anyway, there was a off the top Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I am gonna see it.
Mhm.
I am not excited for it. But I hope that it is good, especially because it's written by the actual original comic was written by Tom King, who is not one of my favorite comic book writers at all. I find his stuff pretty heavy-handed for the most part, and so this book was just like that one sweet spot where he just did that
He did it right.
that one trope that I really like with the one character who doesn't really get a lot of attention, and I'm like, it's perfect in my opinion. One of my favorite books of like the past handful of years, in my opinion.
In other words, it's peak.
it's peak.
Yeah.
It's peak.
There's actually another interesting
Yeah.
one. There is another comic book series called Crossed by Garth Ennis, who is one of my favorite comic book writers. As
Fucking loves Garth Ennis.
I unironically really do enjoy Garth Ennis. But like his book, The Crossed, here's a quick plot recap. Let's say you're a Hollywood producer and I pitch this plot to you.
Okay.
A viral plague turns people into rapist zombies.
It's gonna be a no for me, dog. See you guys next week.
And for that reason, I'm out.
I'm like, I can, like, there are certain horror, like, directors or studios or, production studios that I can see would, like, grab onto that or gravitate to that. But it's similar to Blood Meridian, where it's like there's just a level of violence that
Yeah.
you're gonna have to neuter at a certain point. You're gonna boulderize it, and it's just not gonna be the original. And it's like that's why, like, unironically, it's one of those works that exists better in its original form because it could get away with being so incredibly depraved and violent that we just don't we don't have those those lack of standards, I guess you would say. Even like, people have made comparisons to another Garth Ennis series, The Boys, and its Amazon adaptation, and how they've had to censor a lot of the material from the
Yeah.
comic.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's like heavily diluted the actual meaning of what Garth Ennis was trying to say, because he hates superheroes just outright, which is why he wrote The Boys.
Yep.
And if you ever like even see a scene from that, you're like, like, I remember I read a comment on Reddit where somebody said, Garth Ennis wrote The Boys because he hated superheroes, but Amazon made The Boys because they love superheroes.
Yep.
And it's like, it's that total,
That tracks.
mismatch of I don't know what it is with comics and getting that reputation for being hard to adapt. For some reason,
Well, it's a unique form of media where, like, because like with books, you have nothing attached to it, right?
Yeah.
The visuals are all what the people who are adapting them can think about, right? You have descriptions, but that's really just up to reader interpretation.
Yeah.
A lot of them aren't very like literal.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas comics, like, you have what everything looks like.
There's already a preconceived
There's
notion
already a
of what it
preconceived,
should
yeah,
be.
what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
So then it makes like kind of getting that liberty with the adaptation a little bit harder, I feel like. Whereas you're like, okay, I know what this looks like. I know
Mhm.
what it reads like. I know what it air quotes sounds like. I guess that's all the missing is noise. So it's like,
Yeah.
if I already know what it looks like and I already know what it reads like, I expect it to be those things. Whereas with books, you'd be like, oh, well, they never like fully like explained how magic looks in the Harry Potter universe. Like, so it's okay that when they flick their wand, it's just kind of like a bolt. Like, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't care. That's cool. Like, whereas this, you're like, no, Superman has glowing red laser beams out of his eyes.
Yeah.
Why is it blue in this film? That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. This is stupid. So like, I could see it's just like,
Like when people got mad that the X-Men wore all black leather
Mhm.
in the 2000s movies.
yeah, it's
Stuff like
like,
that where you're like,
and then also just the people who like comics are just like a very aggressive breed of fandom.
no.
A little bit.
You wouldn't say. You wouldn't say.
So like I can kind of see it where it's just like it's a little bit harder to take your artistic vision onto something like that versus
Yeah.
just words on a page.
Yeah, I remember an old adage from ASU where they would say that everything you write costs money.
Yeah.
And I think that comic books are the furthest extent that you could take that, where it's now everything you draw will cost money to make.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, out of every like book, whether it's like comic book or manga that you've read, is there one that you think you would love to see adapted?
That hasn't been yet? So
Yeah.
just a brand new adaptation. Ooh. See, that's a tough one because I feel like adaptations are getting worse.
Oh, that's a spicy little.
Like, I feel like I mean,
In what
there's
way?
never been like
What adaptations specifically comes to your mind when you say that?
well, because I think of like
Dune.
well, no, that one's good. But like, I think of like the old and golds. So I think of stuff like a Jurassic Park. I think of stuff like Lord of the Rings. Even though I bash it, like those are like really good adaptations, right?
Right.
Everybody would agree with that.
Mhm. Well, the first Jurassic Park, but
Well, yeah,
Michael Crichton might not agree with it.
It got a number of people to read literature, and that's just a good thing in of itself. But I feel like a lot of the stuff, at least that I read, maybe it's just more of Connor centric stuff. Its adaptations are just not as good, not necessarily bad, just not as good. You have some outliers that are really bad.
such as.
I was immediately going to jump to the Divergent series, which books
Okay,
weren't
YA
great.
is a
Divergent.
low hanging
Yeah,
fruit.
no. Books weren't great, but
What are you gonna say? The fifth wave next?
The host.
Yeah,
But a series that I've read that has been adapted that I think is
The
actually
Giver.
a bad adaptation is The Expanse. I think that
Oh,
The Expanse's
interesting.
Amazon adaptation
Because
is
a lot of people would disagree with you on that.
it's fine. It's serviceable. It's not faithful.
Mm.
If that
Interesting.
makes sense.
I'll admit, I watched 10 minutes of the show and I turned it off because I just got bored.
Yeah.
And then I read the book or listened to the book because it was an audiobook and I was like, this might be the greatest story I've ever heard.
That's what I mean. Because I finished the books and I was like, this is like the greatest sci-fi
Yeah.
series of all time, at least at the moment when I read it. And then I went and
excuse me, the Halo series?
and then I went and I watched the show, and I think I got through one season. And I was like, this is not what I read at
Yeah.
all. Like, it's still cool. It's still cool sci-fi stuff, and it looks really nice, and I like this.
Yeah.
But like, this isn't.
I think it's Amazon's most expensive show.
It isn't capturing what I was looking
Or,
for.
I guess was at one point.
I already have an idea what the answer is going to be, which is it depends. But do you really think that the goal of a adaptation should be to be faithful or to adapt the story to a new medium?
Okay, so I've had
Number
this.
two, my lord.
I've had this conversation with a lot of people actually, very recently, where it is to adapt it to that new medium. It's to tell it in a new way via the new medium, right?
Yeah.
And you have to tell things in certain ways with certain types of media. There are things you can do with books you can't do with movies, and vice versa. But to go back to the original question of adaptations are getting worse, it's because some of the things that are being made into movies do not make good movies.
Such as?
But is that because they're not being faithful, or is that because they're just not properly adapting the story to the new medium?
Well, I think it's kind of like,
Like
what we were
if the
bringing up with Blood Meridian, where like there's some intrinsic things you're going to lose,
Yeah.
and those intrinsic things are necessary for the story to be as powerful as it is.
No, well, okay, here's the thing. You could absolutely make a Blood Meridian film with the level of violence that is included in the books.
Mhm.
No mainstream Hollywood studio will
Yeah. It probably won't get watched.
touch that.
Yeah.
That will, it probably won't even get a rating to
Mhm.
go out in theaters. But it could absolutely exist in physical reality.
Yeah, but like, would you have the same reaction if you were watching that versus reading it? We have two very different reactions to seeing something viscerally happen versus just having words on a page.
That is true.
So then you could just adapt to the level of violence that people feel when they're reading it. That would be then your goal.
Mhm.
And you're not being faithful when you do that. You're still just adapting
Yeah.
it to a new medium.
So I don't think necessarily faithfulness is where you should end at all. I think it should be you should try to adapt it and make it palatable in the new format.
Mhm.
It's just that sometimes things get lost.
I think
And I think people get too lost in, especially since, and I don't want to like necessarily blame Marvel, but I feel like since the Marvel adaptations,
Take a
There's-
shot if you're playing that game.
there's been no, because I'm not saying it as in like Marvel ruined this thing, but just like I think
Marvel bad.
there's more of a well, I like them more than you two do, so I don't want to hear it.
Hey, I liked everything pre-Civil War, for the most part.
I just think there's more of like and I mean, maybe it's also like the video game syndrome, where it's just there's more of a attempt to make everything visually exciting
Mm-hmm.
when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And I think that can lose some things. Because like I like sci-fi stuff, right? One of the really cool things to me about the original Star Wars when they shot their space scenes, and obviously that was because they were puppet or they're
Right.
little models and stuff,
Mhm.
right? Is that they would have these shots where it's just black and you just see like the Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
And it's tiny as hell. And then it comes up and you're like, wow, this thing is massive. Right? But that's space. You're in the blackness of space,
Yeah.
and stuff look like that. And then in The Expanse, they play with that a lot. They play with distance a lot in the books. It's one of the coolest things that I like about it is that it plays on the fact that space is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Things take time. But then they show space cluttered all the time. And I'm like, but it's not. You can't have clutter in space. That's like an actual fallacy because
Yeah.
it's so freaking big. Like,
That's one of the things I liked about the Dune movie was it would be like, oh look, there's a little spaceship. Oh shit, it's the size of like
yeah, it's
rock.
a moon. Yeah, like,
You see like one little streak of a missile come, and you're like, oh, that's tiny, and then it takes out an entire
yeah.
like
And I think
continent.
Dune did a great job on making stuff visually exciting
Yeah.
without making it visually dense.
Yeah.
As I guess with the kind of how I'm going for.
Yeah.
Where it's not so much like there's too much on the screen, but there's just too much noise on the
That's
screen.
all. That's a talent thing though behind this.
Oh,
behind
for
the
sure.
Camera. I think
But,
that's just a lack of filmmakers understanding film.
The question wasn't, are we going to have an amazing director with amazing actors and an amazing effects team adapt your favorite piece of media? It's just, do you want to see it adapted? Yes or no? And I'm like, well, statistically, not going to go great. Like,
I think the two examples I think of the most are The Shining, which Stephen King does not enjoy, but
Right.
I think most people who've seen the movie think is almost superior to the book.
Right.
And then I think of Alfonso Cuarón directed, or no, maybe it was David Lean who did I think it was Great Expectations. It was where he read like a handful of chapters in the book, and then he just made up everything else in between.
I mean, Ridley Scott did that with Napoleon.
Yeah.
He read like 2 pages of the Napoleon book. He was like, I'm
Holy
basing my
crap.
movie off this,
he,
and then didn't finish it. And it's like, oh yeah, and he went to Egypt and bombed the Great Pyramids of Giza. I'm like, my brother in Christ, they're still intact. Like,
Yeah.
you're just lying at this point. What are we doing? Such a stupid movie.
he did
I
the
hate
Spark
that movie.
Notes. It was like he had the test the day before class. He had to go quickly read it.
I hate that
Yeah.
movie.
Essay was due.
Okay, funny story about that. In high school, we read As I Lay Dying, the William Faulkner book, which is written in an incredibly experimental style. Every chapter is stream of consciousness, which means that there's like not much.
Punctuation
It's like
stuff, right?
free word association, not much punctuation, and each chapter is from a different character's perspective. In that class, we watched a little snippet of the movie adaptation,
Yeah.
which was directed by James Franco, who has done a bunch of. He also did Child of God by Cormac McCarthy as well, which got like horrible reviews. He's done a lot of adaptations, attempts at.
Wasn't he trying to do a Pickner?
He was.
Was it Pickner that he was trying to do? Or am I thinking of someone else? No, I'm thinking of, sorry. I was thinking
think-
of PTA.
I know that Franco did own the rights to Blood Meridian at one point in time.
What the hell?
Anyway,
I'm going to do that one day. Just be like, yeah,
Just buy the rights
I
and
don't know.
stuff,
It's just a book. I just like found it on the list and I
Yeah.
own the rights.
Yeah. It was like $1,000.
Yeah.
yeah.
Give me $2,000. It's yours.
And what
Make
was
a movie out of
interesting
it.
was that, like, because of the experimental style of the book, in the film, in order to represent the difference between what is actually happening but what the actual stream of consciousness the character is writing about, he uses split screen.
Whoa.
Almost every shot is split screen, where one is like that 500 Days of Summer, where it's like
Yeah.
expectation versus reality. He uses that effect throughout the film. But he plays the book completely straight, like an actual family drama. If you've ever read As I Lay Dying, it's a pretty funny book. Every character is like an idiot, and they all make the worst decision. And I told my English teacher, I'm like, this book is like a Woody Allen or a Coen Brothers comedy. And in his very Mr. Moore way, he was like, "You're right." And I was
Yeah,
like,
that was Mr. Moore, all right.
I was
Love
like,
that. I love that.
that's why that adaptation failed, is because for some reason James Franco
Just didn't capture the essence.
yeah, he didn't even understand that the book was meant to be like, look at these stupid people be stupid.
Yeah.
He was like, no, this is a serious family drama. and you completely missed the tone of the book,
Yeah.
and it ruined the
I
adaptation.
mean, that matters to
yeah.
a large extent.
Let's say that maybe that's probably the most important part of adaptation is just getting the same tone almost.
Yeah.
You know,
Trying
'cause,
to
like,
replicate that.
as long as you're matching plot beats, you'll get the underlying concepts. But if you make the Hunger Games into a comedy, it's not really going to hit the same.
Is there an adaptation of a piece of media that you love that you know isn't faithful,
Jurassic Park.
but you still enjoy it because you just think it's a good movie?
Jurassic
I
Park.
mean, Jurassic Park, yeah.
Jurassic Park. The book is a horror. It's a horror sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the movie is just like an action adventure escape from Alcatraz.
I mean, depending on who you
style
ask,
of,
the movie
like-
could be a horror.
To a degree, yes, but there are also scenes where I vividly
Yeah.
remember reading like, "What the, my like,
Mhm.
are you even allowed to write like this?" Like, it was just
Whoa.
so like, just not only out of
Gruesome.
left field, but just caught you like off guard the level of violence because it was like literally 2 pages before we're talking about
Chaos theory.
yeah yeah Malcolm's doing the thing with the water drop and
Yeah.
you're like
Mhm.
that makes sense and then it's like oh yeah somebody's head just got ran over by a tire and you're like that wasn't in the movie. But I mean I still enjoy both
Yeah.
pieces.
Speaking of
For what
Steven
they are.
Spielberg, Jaws.
Yeah, I never read
There's
that
a
one.
there's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
read
of changes, not so much with the plot, but specifically with the characters. The characters act nothing in the movie like they do in the book.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think it smooths out the story a little bit
Yeah.
better. But Jaws was optioned for film rights before it was even published. Like that's how popular
They knew it was gonna
that
be
story
film, yeah.
was. So that movie was in production before they even had the book in print.
I mean something very recent. Killers of the Flower Moon changes the perspective, the POV like
Oh, you've read the book, that's right.
completely because it's originally you're following it's called the Bureau of Investigation at the time, not the FBI. You're following him as he tries to figure out what everybody's doing, and you're getting like chapters of every character here and there. But in the movie, it's following from the actual perpetrators of the crimes and how they were able to kind of assimilate into the Osage. Spoiler alert for the movie and the book. And the main character of the book doesn't even show up till the last 30 minutes when it's Jesse Plemons. And you're like, oh.
I remember you saying that
Yeah.
during our review. Yeah.
And it's like, that's
That was a good movie.
interesting.
Mhm.
It works really well, though, because when you watch the movie, you're like, there's a lot of levels to why that movie works the way it works.
Right, yeah.
I won't go
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Go watch our review of that.
Go watch the movie.
It was a
It
long
was-
review, yeah.
I
Go
think
watch
I
the movie.
said it was
if
my
you
number
think
2
it's
of the
too
year.
long, get off TikTok for like 2 seconds and just enjoy something. You can handle a 3-hour movie.
No, I can, but I just like to.
You like to complain about
Yeah.
it, but you can still do it.
So let me ask you guys this. There are in the zeitgeist, or at least in the conversation, certain pieces of media that continually get brought up as potentially being adapted
Mhm.
over the course of years.
Mhm.
I don't know if that is the case in like certain like subcultures that you guys are a part of, like an anime, for example.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been hearing about the possible Akira adaptation for like the last 26 years of my life.
I mean, I'd like to
And-
see a new one just because they missed a lot in the.
It's so weird. Okay, Akira, when you want to talk about adaptations, the fact that the manga and the movie are made by the same guy and
They're completely different.
they're
aren't they?
completely
There-
different.
there's a like
That's
hard
awesome.
divergent point where you're just
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I think that was a smart decision.
Yeah.
Obviously. I mean,
To an extent.
they both tell different stories essentially. It's kind of like the 2001 A Space Odyssey thing where the movie was written at the same time he was writing the book and they were talking with each other. And so Stanley Kubrick was like, I'm going to not include this stuff that you will explain in your book, and you're not going to include these visuals that I'm going to include in the movie. And that way they're like companion pieces in a way.
Yeah.
I think Akira kind of works that way. If only the manga series wasn't like 9 books long and each one like $30,
Yeah.
I think would be a little more digestible.
Yeah, they're thick.
Berserk.
Yeah,
Berserk.
Berserk.
They're
Like
like, they're like as big as Saga. Like they're
Berserk is
Yeah.
$50 a volume,
yeah.
or I guess edition, whatever they call.
Well, I mean,
them.
you know, it's limited edition.
But because of Akira's
What? It's the most popular, one of the most popular mangas in the world.
joke.
How is it limited?
It's a joke about the dude being dead, but whatever.
Anyway,
He only produced one copy.
It's an
Move on.
NFT actually.
Move on.
I've heard about
It's
a
an
bad
ape.
joke. It was a bad
It's a
joke.
bored ape.
yeah. I mean Akira, obviously Neon Genesis as well.
Yeah, people would love
Which
to see Neon Genesis.
I hope never happens.
Yeah, Dragon
Um,
Ball Kai.
People have been talking about a new Soul Eater adaptation because that's another one where they were making it as the manga was still being written.
Yeah.
And so it has a huge divergence point. And
Anime
it's
has a really
bad.
interesting history with that of readapting.
Mm-hmm.
And the readaptation is almost always exactly as good as you would hope it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, Dragon Ball Z Kai. You have.
Okay, that's
And
not
obviously,
correct
if you
statement
grew
for
up
the
with the
Dragon
original,
Ball Kai, that's not correct, but okay.
I think if you're Hunter x Hunter,
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Full Metal
considered
Alchemist Brotherhood.
the greatest show
Yeah.
by a lot of people.
yeah, the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Anyways, going back to
I mean, not a book, but there's an adaptation that doesn't make a good movie.
The live action One Piece.
I've heard good things about
Connor, are there any adaptations you would want to see in the world?
it. Okay, if we're talking like it is perfect.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
In a vacuum, if
is-
it's the perfect.
It's perfect, right? I'm not
Yes.
worried about somebody mucking it up.
Yes. That's another helicopter flies
The
over.
Horus Heresy entirely.
Okay, unironically though, The Fall of Horus would be a pretty cool like TV show, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, I would
Amazon,
like to see Paradise Lost.
Fingers crossed, Amazon does not mess that up.
Adapted.
Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost has the best adaptation, by the way, with the video
But-
game.
No, The Children of Time. I don't remember the author. It's some Russian guy.
Oh, Andre, like
Wait,
Tchaikovsky or
Yes.
something.
which one is that one?
Oh God, how do I
It's
explain
the one with the cover that's like green and black and it has a spaceship
Yes.
on it.
I'm
And
gonna look it
his
up.
name is in yellow
This
font.
sounds super familiar. Continue.
I've talked about it before. I don't know if I've talked about it on the pod, but I've talked
Continue
about it a
your
lot
point,
before
please.
because
He's absolutely
it,
talked about it before.
it warped my concept of reality. Because it's just such a good, not only just a good narrative piece.
Oh, I've
or
never
just
read it.
I know you have. And not just like as like a story, ignoring all the themes. It's still just a good story. But also when you add in all the themes and you actually like read it on a deeper level, it is so powerful of a narrative. And he does it 2 more times. And I was just like, that whole series just changed the way I look at life. So like having that be adapted to, I don't know if you could make a movie out of it. To be honest with you, it'd probably have to be a show. They're thick.
Do you honestly think that most book adaptations would be serviced better as TV shows?
Absolutely.
I think you can do.
maintain that
It's
too.
either that or you do the part 2, which I don't
That's
really
a gamble.
like.
Yeah.
But like like when Deathly Hallows was the first one to do it.
They did it well.
And they did it well. Where that was the first time where I was like, okay, maybe this is what we should do going forward for the thick books. There are a lot of books that are small,
Yeah.
and you can make a single movie out of it, right? That's fine. But I'm like, when your book is like that big, maybe you put a knife through the middle of it, you know? Like, and I think like Dune does it to great effect, where it hits the first half where it's almost a completely different story, and then it hits the second
Yeah.
half where it's a completely different story, and you put them together, you got a full thing.
Get a full saga.
Yeah,
Saga
you got a full
adaptation?
saga.
Have you read Saga?
Of course, I've read Saga.
I
How
made
do you feel
everyone
about
read
Saga?
Saga.
I love Saga. It's a great. It's a great comic.
Have you kept up with it?
No, I'm waiting for the next big one because I don't
Yeah.
like waiting.
No, I did it. Me and Sarah bought the next 2 after that ends.
Mhm.
I think 10 and 11, or maybe 9 and 10. I forget. And I read them and I was like, why did I read them? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
now I'm
it's-
just waiting.
It's
Because I think
definitely.
they went on another hiatus, didn't they?
I don't know. It's one of those comics where you have to sit down and read it in massive chunks because it's just so good that
I
like
think
you
I
go through
read-
it in like 10 minutes. You're like,
You can't put it down.
yeah. Because I want
I
to say
think I read it
I
all
read
in
that in like less than a
Yeah,
day. I think I read it
yeah.
in like
I was
4
very,
hours. I was
very
just
similar. Have we all read that?
I've
that,
made-
that specific
yes,
one?
this specific one. Yes.
I have made everybody read Saga.
yeah, that's awesome. Could we see that as a TV show?
Absolutely not. No.
No,
Wow, that was
it's a,
It's
fast.
TV,
just-
it's a TV writer.
I mean, but Brian K. Vaughan has also said that he wrote it specifically. He wrote the world in a way that it could never be adapted. I mean, first off, there's too much nudity.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
second,
I mean, but that you could just
a
cut to
TV show you
black,
can get away in.
you know, show
Yeah.
only the
There's
top
ways,
half. Like,
yeah.
there's ways to. I did tell James, I was like, I love Saga, but it's just weird because I'll read like 6 pages of, and I'll be like, whoa, this is a great story about, love traversing all kinds of obstacles in the world and how maybe we shouldn't care about each other. Oh my God, there's a giant penis in the middle of an entire spread of like someone's butthole
Yeah.
getting stretched
And
out.
that's why I love Saga.
I'd just be like,
Unironically.
all right, I need to go to bed. He would just come out of nowhere.
Oh man. Anyway, no, I don't think Saga. It was written to never be adapted, and I don't think it ever could be
Yeah,
adapted.
They always say that though.
it will maybe
Authors
eventually
always-
if it gets more like if
It
book
could
2
be an
comes out,
animated movie.
Yeah, I could see it.
I don't think enough people took
3D
advantage
animation.
of that.
Yeah,
I'm really disappointed that not enough adaptations of books end up being animated.
that was something I was gonna bring up. Was
Bring
that
it up
there's, I mean, you're talking the point. Yeah, is it just like people forget that animation is
Well, that's the conversation we always have if people don't. They
Yeah.
have this stigma attached to animation.
yeah,
Being for kids.
Yeah,
but like
that's what it is.
a lot of stuff just needs animation almost.
I mean, Coraline, Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Is
Those are both great adaptations.
James and the Giant Peach.
that
Me
an
and what?
adaptation?
What?
Yeah,
You
Charlie
know that?
Brown and the Chocolate Factory.
Wait, Charlie Brown.
isn't
I mixed the two.
isn't James and the Giant Peach a book?
I don't
Yes,
know.
it's by Roald Dahl, the guy who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, okay. Well, no, because like Isaac said it, and I was like, "Am I just stupid?"
Like I said, I don't read.
I know. I just like,
I don't know.
sorry, that was just that you just caught me way off guard, and it totally derailed me completely. I
don't-
was like, I swear to God, I've seen that book. Am I just crazy? Like,
You're not crazy.
Yeah, my favorite,
No.
my favorite kids book.
Black Hawk Down.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say Henry and what's the books about like
Holes?
Susan and no or
Nancy Drew. The Hardy Boys.
Ramona and Beezus. There you go.
Max and Ruby.
Ramona and Beezus. Junie B. Jones. America? When are we gonna get a Junie B. Jones adaptation?
Because the Diary of a Wimpy Kid ones didn't do well.
God.
And so live action.
Oh, that
can-
I
Okay,
actually disagree.
those
The
were-
first two slap so hard. That party scene in Roger Rules is so funny. I love it.
I've never
Connor,
seen
it's
them.
a kid's book. For crying
I know,
out
but
loud.
I just was like,
what are we doing here, guys? It's
I
a
don't know.
kid's book.
I just didn't like the movies. I don't know what you want from me.
Kids should still have good things
Yes.
to watch and
and I'm
experience.
telling you, it was good.
I mean, shit. All right, everybody can have their own opinion.
The books are good though.
I love the
You
books.
just don't like the movies.
Yeah, the
When
movies.
did you
I
guys-
just don't think the adaptations were that good.
When did you guys stop reading?
Like just entirely, or specifically Diary of a
Yeah,
Wimpy
yeah.
Kid.
When did you guys lose the ability to read words?
Dude,
Probably
No, when
right
did you-
after I graduated
When
college.
when did you guys stop reading the Diary of a Wimpy Kids?
I don't know the name, but I think it was the brown one.
Oh, you got pretty deep into it, huh?
I want to say I read it for a
stopped at-
long
I
time.
stopped at the one after yellow. I think it was purple.
I
You guys are just going by colors.
it
dude,
goes-
do you think you remember? I remember
'Cause
anything
it goes-
past Roger
it goes-
Rules.
Yeah, it goes red, blue, green,
Uh-huh.
yellow, purple, and then I think brown is after that one.
James.
And then he keeps making them. This
Yeah,
kid has been
there's-
this kid has been in middle school for like 15 years at this
I
point. It's
know.
crazy.
Book number 4 is called Dog Days.
Yes,
and
that's
that's
the
the
yellow
one that I think I stopped reading at.
I stopped at the one after.
But only
that. I
because
think
at that
it's-
point I think
it's
I
the
was
one
old
that
enough to.
I think it's purple.
No, that's The Ugly Truth is purple. That's
Which-
the 5th book.
What's the fourth book?
4th book is Dog Days and it is
Right,
yellow.
that's what I said. Yeah, fourth, and
Yeah.
then the fifth book is purple,
Mm-hmm.
which is the one that I stopped.
Yeah,
and
I
then
think
the next one is brown, I think.
Cabin Fever, it
Yep.
is like a light blue.
maybe I stopped by then.
Oh,
I don't
then I
feel
stopped
like.
at Cabin Fever because that's when him and Rowley. How do I know this?
Because you read them.
Dude, I mean, they were pretty fun. Like, I'm not gonna lie, those
Yeah, they
books
were
were
good
great. They
reads.
slapped.
I do remember at one point being like, when I was in middle school, reading, being like, Greg Heffley's a bitch.
Greg Heffley was my introduction to the main character cannot be the protagonist.
I was like, this dude is a soy boy. Like,
But
I remember, and then I was like, I'm getting mad about a middle school book. Like, what's going? I need to go touch grass.
here's one that I want actually that would make a very interesting adaptation. It wouldn't be good, but I'd love to see it. I want to see the Warriors books done.
Okay.
Okay, pause. Animorphs. If PBS Kids was still a thing, Animorphs would, or like Disney XD,
Animorphs would
Animorphs
slap.
would slap.
Yeah,
like
that'd go
A
real
Power
hard.
Ranger style Animorphs. Do you guys remember actually reading those?
Oh yeah, they were crazy.
Do you remember how like
They got dark. They got really dark.
The last book is them sneaking onto the sub of the enemy, the enemy group or whatever. I forgot what they're called, and like basically stopping a nuclear war from happening. And I was
Doesn't a kid die?
I was like, the first one they all discover their powers, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I read the last one, and I was like, I missed like 50 something editions of this. Like, how did we get?
No,
here?
yeah, those books were surprisingly dark.
I think we should read them and then do a book review.
Where are you gonna find them, man?
When there's
my
a will,
God.
there's a way.
All right, I want you to find me the eBay cost of those books. There's no way they're cheap.
Yeah, there's a lot.
The Warrior books would be pretty good.
Warriors would be cool.
I think that would be constrained mostly by
The fact that it's
I
all
was-
cats.
technology. Yeah.
That's
No,
what I'm saying. I think it make
it's
good
like
animation.
the live action Cats movie with human actors.
Okay, honestly, I'd watch
so they
that.
were adapted onto a TV show.
Yeah.
Shit, really?
You guys didn't know that?
No,
Is it any good? What's the reviews look like?
Probably from back in like the 90s.
I mean it's on Nickelodeon, so
Was it a live action or a
looks like it was a live action. Yeah.
live action Nickelodeon show? That does not bode well. What's the reviews, Isaac? What do we got?
I don't know. Keep talking. I'll look it up.
All right.
oh my god.
But going back to the animation versus live action and children's books, I never actually watched it, but I heard the Captain Underpants movie wasn't half bad, and I think
never
that was a
watched
good
it.
example of like
It was
good-
the same studio, I think, who did the Charlie Brown movie as well, which was also really good.
6.5 on IMDb.
better than I expected.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was a good example of using the medium for something that really wouldn't like. Could you imagine Captain Underpants live action?
Yeah, it sounds like
I mean, if
HR.
yeah, I was gonna say that's a movie I watched. That's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, there's definitely a bunch of things you could really go crazy with.
It's a reversed cuties.
Yeah. Oh,
But anyway,
What about something like Goosebumps? Even though
They
there's
have a
the,
show.
there's the weird Jack Black adaptation.
that's true. There was also TV adaptations for Goosebumps
yeah, there's
as well.
TV adaptations a long time ago. Go watch JonTron covers a couple of them.
Yeah, but you had to go watch John Tron to do
Hey, that was
Yeah.
before we knew that he was a
racist.
then kind of losing his edge.
Marbles.
Not as
Oh yeah,
funny.
there is one.
Yeah.
Oh, is it like in the similar? Oh, okay, cool. I see.
They were all right. Ooh,
We need to adapt more kid things from our childhood.
a good at
I
good
think
at,
we might be doing too much stuff with
Yeah,
our
I
childhood.
disagree.
actually
More Power Rangers. Give us more Power Rangers.
adaptation that was pretty decent from the book series. Was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
I
No.
don't remember that ever
That was
Hard
being
a good
adapted.
disagree.
No, because like they actually the film itself was really solid, and they adapted a couple of like the major.
Hard disagree.
Really?
I hated that movie.
Oh, well, I mean, fair enough.
You guys remember Circuit du Freak?
Huh?
The what?
Circuit
The
du
only
Freak?
one that freaked me out was the Blob. The one that.
Well, I mean, how good it was as a horror film is up to interpretation. But
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
like,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like in
Oh,
terms
just
of
the
it
book.
actually being an entertaining piece was that segment involving the Blob.
Fair enough.
The one that swallowed people.
So I want to go back to Connor's point about adaptations getting worse.
Are they?
Are they? I mean, okay.
Also, what is defined as an adaptation? I know you mentioned The Lord of the Rings, but like, they're not basing it off any books. It's just the world.
Well, I also want to ask, do you think it's because the feedback loop has closed into such a degree that now things are expected to get adaptations or at least movie deals as soon as they become popular? And, you know, maybe in the past it was, well, these were like classics from decades, if not years prior, that they were, you know, adapting
Yeah.
as opposed to like contemporary literature. And now it's like if a book even hits the bestseller list, it already has options for a movie deal.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is that I feel like there's commercialization for everything. Is that it's this did really good in one medium, let's make it into the other mediums.
Yeah.
Which used to be a big thing with video game movies or movies into video games.
Yeah.
Which
oh yeah, remember
I miss.
those?
I miss some of those. Those games were some of the best.
Wait,
crappy
video
games.
Video games into movies?
Movies
movies
that
and
got
video games.
video game adaptations.
Oh, like Max Payne?
The Transformer video games. You know, one from the film Wii game.
Those are fun.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I miss
yeah, we're
those.
saying that those were good.
Oh, you're saying those are good. Sorry,
Well,
sorry,
not all
sorry.
of
I
them, but, like,
misinterpreted.
You know, like those used to be a big thing. Where it's like movie came out, we made a video game for it. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, my favorite game of all time, Superman 2.
Despicable Me video game, good stuff.
Cars.
Cars video game.
Unironically, Cars is just slapped.
Simpsons a hit and run.
Yes.
The best NASCAR game ever.
Monster Jam.
Gran Turismo.
God damn it. You got me on that one. You got me on that one.
Continue your point.
But yeah, so like I think there's just a lot of like, thing comes out, we need to immediately capitalize on thing to make more money,
Yes.
and people don't really read into it, and they don't give it time to like sink in and like
Marinate.
marinate and let its ideas and themes kind of stick with you as a person.
You got to make it like a piece of chicken
Yeah, you know,
overnight.
you gotta let it sit overnight, let it cook
Put it
in
the
your
crock pot.
brain so that you can actually truly adapt it in a good way. Because you're just taking, you're like, let me read this really fast, write the script because we have to start filming now, right? You're not going to understand it. You're going to miss a lot of things when you write that script. But if you read it and you're like, okay, I read it once, I'm going to read it again. You know, now I've come back to it with new eyes because every time you reread, rewatch, read anything, you get a better understanding of it, better appreciation. So like you just kind of, people just flip through stuff, and I think it's you can't ingest it. You can't, you know, you can maybe make something decent, but to capture the true essence of that thing, unless it's a piece of crap book, and then whatever.
Yeah, like The Last of Us Part 2.
Last of Us wasn't a book, but yeah.
Day 15
and
of me trying to bait Connor.
It goes both ways, because like this is kind of out of the blue. Neither of you are gonna have anything to comment on this, but I'm bringing it up anyway. Nier Automata, very award-winning game, has a goddamn book.
Yeah.
And it's a decent-ish book, but it's very much like, was clearly like written to capitalize on the fact that Nier Automata was a critically acclaimed game that made a ton of money.
Yeah.
And like I own it, I read it, and I was like, yeah, this is serviceable at best, but like it doesn't capture the themes of the game in any sense of the word.
Doesn't Dark Souls have books?
Dark
too?
Souls
Like
also has
companion books.
Yeah. And same thing where it's just like you're reading this and like this just it isn't the same. The Bloodborne comics do a good job, but that's
But I feel like stuff like that is explicitly marketed for fans of that.
that's what all
Well,
adaptations.
should the
are.
movies not also be marketed for fans of that? as
Sure,
well?
but like it's
that's the whole
different
point of
where it's
adapting
like-
anything.
It's like, hey, we're taking this story, and then when we just want to make it here, and like for everybody. Whereas when I adapt a book of Dark Souls, it's like, no, this is specifically for Dark Souls fans, and not, oh, let me get this guy who reads like, you know, R.L. Stein interested. Not R.L.
Well,
Stein. Who am I thinking of? I don't know.
Well, that's the point of-
Chronicles of Narnia. Like,
Well,
let me
that's-
get him into.
That's
the
exactly what
Dark
they're
Souls.
trying to do, though. Is that when you make adaptations, you are trying to get a bigger audience. You're
Right.
trying to get people who may not.
But I'm saying
engage
those
with
books
it.
that you're talking about are explicitly for fans of said thing. So
No.
like,
Incorrect.
no, it is correct.
No, they're not, because
they're literally in the video game section of every
they're not
bookstore.
though. Every single time I found these pieces of literature, the fact that I know they exist, they were not in the like here's the video game store. They were in like just sci-fi, or they're in like just fantasy. They were just stuck in
Might be at
between.
different bookstores than me then.
Probably because I go to actual bookstores and not.
I
your
mean,
piece
I
of
go to
crap
the
ones.
same. I go to the same bookstores you do.
I go to underground ones.
You go to the hipster ones.
Yeah.
Which one do you go to? It's called Barnes and Noble.
But yeah, so like I mean, but that's the point of adapting anything. Adaptating? That's not a word. Adapting.
Could be.
Adapting
You just made it
anything.
a word.
Put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Nice.
It's the whole point of
It's like
doing
a
adaptations
plethora.
is to get a wider audience.
Right.
And every adaptation is designed, this is for the fans, but also. That's the whole point. Because otherwise, you're missing out on the initial audience, which is going to give you the reimbursement funds.
Right.
And sometimes you miss the plot, looking at you, Avatar.
Which Avatar?
The Airbender.
Not the Blue Man Group.
No, not the Blue Man Group. And sometimes you hit the mark. I feel like the Hunger Games movies got a lot of people to actually read those books.
Yeah, I think as we're talking about adaptations, about things that we've already experienced the original material of, has there ever been an adaptation you watched where you thought, well, then now I got to go back and read the source material?
Yeah, like half the stuff. Well, no, because I know a movie is coming out of something, and I'll read
Ahead of time?
before the movie comes out.
Would you read the book Shogun?
Now,
Yeah.
no, only because it's like 1,000
It's like, oh, this
pages.
is a very long book. Yeah.
And this is the
That's
same
true.
guy that gets on me for not wanting to watch a 3-hour film.
Okay,
Same concept.
3-hour movie, a book that's gonna take me 7 months.
It was bait. Don't take the bait.
I'm gonna take the bait. I take the bait and you're real. You son of a bitch.
Took the whole ride.
You're in the lake with me now. You're in my turf. Don't take the bait. You know what I do on Reddit?
Part of the reason why I went back and I read Jonathan Hickman's Avengers run is because I enjoyed Infinity War, and it was partially inspired by his Infinity arc.
Yeah.
They didn't adapt the entire Jonathan Hickman arc, which I think most people want them to do
Yeah.
with Secret Wars. But at the very least, like enjoying that movie was maybe be like, oh, this thing that I had previously kind of dismissed as just being popular. I actually went
Well,
back read and thought
in
this
that
is really
same
good.
in that same breath, like you showed me a Long Halloween, and we're like, hey, this is what the Dark Knight was based on, and I read it, and I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this is really good. And I was like, that makes me appreciate the Dark Knight even more.
Mhm.
That makes me appreciate both even more
Yeah.
because I never
Um,
read that issue.
hmm
The only thing I
thing.
can think of where I've been like, oh, I should go back to this was Dune, is I need to go reread Dune now that I've watched the movie.
You should read
Um,
up until you should read all 3 of them.
Well, I mean, yeah, I need to go do the whole thing, but
good.
but most of the stuff that I watch where I'm like, oh, this is adapting something, I've already read the source material or I've aware of it. The only
Oh,
things
that's
that I
right.
can-
You don't watch movies. Yeah, I forgot.
yeah, I read books. I don't watch movies. There's outliers. Like I didn't read the Lord of the Rings books before I watched the films, and I imagine that would maybe affect my opinion of those movies. Probably not, because I read the Hobbit book and I watched the movies, and I was like, wow.
Wait,
both
wait,
of those
wait.
are bad.
So you're basing your entire basis of how you feel about Lord of the Rings, the franchise, is based on the Hobbit book and movies?
Not the
Is that
Hobbit
what you said?
movies. I've watched all 3 of the Lord of the Rings films.
Okay.
I've watched all but the last Hobbit movie because you could not pay me to continue that.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I read the Hobbit book.
Okay.
In that
I
order,
said-
or
no,
that's just a list of stuff?
just
Okay.
the list of stuff. I think it was movies, Hobbit, then the Hobbit movies. I think I read like maybe a chapter of Fellowship of the Ring.
But you don't like fantasy, right?
I'm not.
Do you like fantasy?
I don't prefer.
I forget
it.
what you like.
I'm very like. There's good fantasy, but like
He's
it's
not going to read it. He likes sci-fi. He just doesn't want to say it.
Well, no, because like there's not like I don't want to like dismiss it outright.
It's too.
It's not. It's
Are you
not
red
a,
pill or blue pill?
yeah. It's not one or the other. It's just like if you handed me one of equal value of either or, I'm gonna pick the sci-fi every time. But if you hand me a piece of crap sci-fi book and a really good fantasy book, I'm gonna take the fantasy book. It's about how good things are. I just prefer these settings
What
more.
was the last best fantasy book that you read? The Blade itself?
Blade itself was pretty good. I need to still let you borrow that. I keep forgetting about it.
Don't worry.
I'd have to go look at my Goodreads. I read a lot
Man
of books.
doesn't know what he
James.
read. I've been sitting here this whole podcast staring at my bookshelf thinking, what has been adapted?
Yeah.
What would I like
Yeah,
to
you-
see?
I've been doing that in my head too. Like I'm in my room right now. Like
Yeah,
going through
you
my
got
shelf.
a bookshelf to look at. All my books are digital.
Skill issue.
Yeah.
I don't have a space issue. All my books are in storage or digital.
Get a $300 bookcase.
Yeah, it stores my models.
Speaking of which, you know what? Actually, for me, a really good example of a movie I watched, and then I actually haven't read the original book, but I've read other stuff from that same author, is Wildfire, the movie directed by Paul Dano, starring Carey Mulligan.
Hmm.
We read that for, I think it was either the first adaptation podcast that we did, I think. Because I knew that, oh no, it was actors who became directors. That's what we were talking about. Because it's directed by Paul Dano.
Right.
And I watched that movie and I was like, oh, this was actually pretty good. And I've heard about the author. And so I went back and I read, Richard Ford is his name. And I like read a short story collection from him, which like kind of same like area and time period in like the like 1950s in like the West, like Montana, places like that. And I was like, well, shit. I need more of this stuff.
Yeah.
Give me more, please. So it's happened to me, not as often because I'm kind of also in the same camp as Connor, where most of the stuff I've read has been adapted. I have the bad habit of reading something and then as soon as I finish it, seeing that they're making an adaptation for it.
Yeah.
Like all the way back to Spiderwick Chronicles,
Yeah.
basically, or like even like
you get
with
scared?
series of unfortunate events, where it's like right when I finish
Oh, wow.
those, and they're always like, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's a movie out."
What'd you think of the TV show?
I never watched it.
What'd you think of the movie?
I mean, I was in like fifth grade.
Oh, so you can make a comment on the Spiderwick
yeah.
movie, but you
Yeah.
can't make a comment.
That's just the earliest example that I remember.
You know, would be a great. I just thought of this right now. Thinking of childhood books. You know, would be a
Bobby
great
Pendragon.
adaptation.
What?
Gregor the Overlander. You guys ever read
I
those?
never read it.
I never.
Oh, I gotta
Pitch it to
I
me.
gotta put you guys
Yeah,
on.
give us the elevator pitch.
What's your log line?
All right, Susan B. Collins. I'm sorry, I'm gonna steal. Basically, I think he's an 11-year-old boy. I think he's 12, 11, whatever. His sister falls down a chute in their New York apartment. He goes after her. He's like, "Wait, let me save you, because I think my sister's about to die." Ends up getting dropped into what is called the underworld, I think it's called the underland, technically. And it's a world, like literally underground, like a giant continent.
Oh, City of Ember.
It's filled of like, very similar.
It wasn't the same.
Another book, another childhood book. It's filled with like talking giant rats and mouses, giant bats. Like the humans ride the bats and they fight rats. It's just
Redwall.
It's a trip.
I was about to say Redwall. That was, as he was explaining, I was like, oh man, Redwall would make for a really cool adaptation.
But there's a prophecy where it's basically alluded that Gregor is gonna die in 5 years because he's what's called the Overlander, and they're like, well, a guy's gonna come from the Overland and like save us from the rats.
Your elevator pitches are terrible. We
Eldorado.
hit the final four.
Also,
like,
not my book. You also put me on the spot.
You know what movie adaptation I remember from my childhood being trash was Sorcerer's Apprentice. It was a Nick Cage movie.
ooh, that's never a good start.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever read The King's Ranger?
No.
That
Fantasy.
was a good one. It's more medieval, but yeah, you're right.
Sorry, that was the initial, like, I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I like this other book a lot better.
Aragorn.
Aragorn?
Aragorn.
You want to talk about Aragorn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I say there's a divisive one.
I don't think it's very divisive.
I read the book and watched the movie when I was
same.
in middle school. Yeah. What do you think?
I remember liking the movie because I think that was one of the few examples where I watched the movie first, and then somebody's like, "This
Really?
is a book," and I was like, "Oh,
And then you're like, 3?
yeah." I was like, "I love dragons." But yeah, I remember just being like, very much like, "Oh wow, this movie is not this book." I still like the movie a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
I
think
had
it
the
just-
opposite
it looked
experience.
cool.
Didn't they make all 3 movies into the one movie? Or all 3 books
no,
into the one?
the 3 books were not out by that point at all.
Yeah, no, I think it was just like
Because
was the
I
second one.
wasn't an
remember-
Aragorn guy.
When I read the book and then I watched the movie and I hated the movie. I think I like just stopped watching it. At a certain
a lot
point.
of people
didn't
did.
even pay attention.
I
to it.
remember
that's what I
when
heard,
I
yeah.
remember that summary came out and they were doing like a big giant like movie post. They were selling movie
Yeah.
posters at the Scholastic Book Fair.
Oh, you know what's another one I remember is Alex Rider, who was like
yes.
this like 007 like young James
Yes,
Bond character.
banger. He worked for MI6 because his uncle got shot and they recruited him to work for MI6.
Yeah.
This is a fucking pitch I could give you right here. That is a banger.
That is a pretty good pitch.
I had like 5 of them. I read every single one, but
Same.
I bought specifically like 3 or 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I read the cover off of those books. I love that series
I
so
did
much.
too.
He gets shot in like the 7th one. It's awesome. He goes to Russia and like becomes like I think his name is like Alexander or something like that.
I just like
out,
unlocked a core memory. for
he's trying to
Isaac's
find.
popping off.
He goes to fucking the ISS to stop the ISS from getting desynced and like crashing onto planet Earth. Like, he's fucking skiing down a mountain, shooting bad guys. Like, there's a
So,
lot of cool shit that I wanted to be Alex Rider in middle school.
So slightly off topic, but the Scholastic book fairs were crazy, right? Only there could you find shit like this.
Yeah, I read the shit out of those books.
But the very first book got a film adaptation.
Yes,
I loved that
Stormbreaker.
movie when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember.
Very good
And Ewan McGregor was in it too. He played the
They were
dad.
gonna make a series on Disney, I believe, and then I think
Really?
for some reason
That's right.
they canceled it.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know why. I'm gonna look this up, but yeah, that series was
Goated.
Yeah.
There was also a young James Bond series as well, which was not as popular, but I enjoyed those books as well too, personally. Mostly because his name was James.
Oh, there is a new
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, it got canceled after a season.
Rip.
Makes sense. They casted a 32-year-old as Alex Rider.
Oh,
Like, he's supposed to be 12, but whatever.
gross.
Well, what about the Percy Jackson TV show?
Did you watch it?
I still need to go watch it.
Cautiously optimistic for season 2. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, I now
am
have more interest in watching this.
on-
Season 1 is the first book, or is it only like some of
Yeah,
it?
they're doing
Season is each
season
book.
per book.
It's probably the best way to
It
handle
is rough. I don't think I finished it.
that. Is it better or worse than the film?
The film has Logan Lerman.
always maintained the movies in a vacuum are bangers. The first one, I love the first one.
Okay. In a vacuum.
Yes,
I
as an
could give you
adaptation,
that.
it is completely dog shit.
Yeah.
But there is out there in the netherworld a pod that we recorded after, because we watched the first one. I think we did like
Yeah.
the show's coming out. Let's watch the movie to like just
Yeah.
talk about it. We recorded the pod. It ended up being
It
terrible.
got,
There was
like,
no
corrupted or
lighting. We
something like
lost the audio.
Yeah.
We lost video. I was just like, we're not putting this out. But I remember watching that and I was like, James, this might be the greatest movie of all time.
That is such an Isaac take. That is such a you thing to do.
Yeah, he loves his nostalgia more than I do.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
get it.
enjoy having a good time.
It's understandable, yeah.
I don't get bogged down by you film nerds about what's
Don't you film
What's
nerds me.
good
Don't
and bad.
look me into that. Don't you dare.
You took the bait. I got him back. I told you I'd get him back.
He's still in the like.
You're in the deep end with me now, buddy.
I'm out with the sharks.
Got him. Yeah, that series is rough. We'll see how it goes. It's just a Disney Plus show that looks and I
Yeah.
don't know. And
Which
it's
is-
kids. It's hard to have kid actors be the leads. So like,
It's so weird because like I don't feel like those books are necessarily difficult to adapt. But like
No.
they seem to be struggling pretty hard with it.
those books are so good too.
They're so like there's not a whole lot of really crazy like aggressive themes in
No.
those books that you have to like tenderly write around. Like you can kind of get away
Well,
with
it's
a lot
not content. It's just literal talent.
yeah.
That's the problem.
I
with
guess
that
that's
show at
fair,
the
yeah.
Well,
moment.
when
Like they're shooting in the sphere, so it looks like a Disney Plus show. It looks terrible.
Mhm.
It's kid actors. It's just a rough production, and it's produced like a kids show. So for kids, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's like it's tough because you wanna there's this core audience like us in our age group really, or really dominantly because I think that's when the movies came out when we were in middle school or the
Yeah.
show books. Sorry.
Yes.
That like you want to cater to, but at the same time with the Disney flag, it's you kind of still have to make it kids. Like you can't make them not to say like, oh, we're gonna have Percy go around chopping everybody's heads off, but it's like there's a fine balance somewhere.
Yeah, there's a
Well, at some point, and I think it was probably in the 2000s, there was a shift in how people approached kid adaptations, or at least just kids media in general. Because I think at a certain point, people started thinking of kids media as like something that could be not just marketed towards kids, because I think that was always going to be the case, but like pandering towards kids.
Yeah.
And I think the issue with a lot of whether it's kids media or teens media, I would probably lump those two together. Sorry, anybody who likes young adult. There's a bigger conscious effort to actually pander to that audience.
Mhm.
Like it's almost like we're gonna adapt this work that you want, and we're gonna give you like
Specifically for you.
specifically for you, like
Yeah.
things like teen
Yeah.
specific,
Mhm.
like whatever it is, whether it's references to pop culture or like the language that they use, something like that. You
Percy
go
Jackson
back,
will say skibbity toilet.
you go back and you watch
No cap.
like movies from the 90s or 80s, what were supposed to be kids movies.
Yeah.
They didn't give a fuck. They were just like swearing and chopping people's
just
heads
dark.
off, and like people were dying at the end of Bridge of Terabithia, and like cars were getting crushed. And
Yeah.
Dude,
That's
Shrek is a violent film.
well, okay, well,
Just like
what an example.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
well, just because like that was like I remember
I was gonna say Brave Little Toaster, but yeah,
I was
Shrek,
rewatching
sure.
it recently
I
for
was
whatever
gonna
reason.
say like Bambi, the mom dies.
I mean that's part of the story.
I know, but it's still like
yeah.
dramatic as a kid.
Yeah.
Think of like The Outsiders, for example. takes itself
Oh,
completely
that's a good one.
seriously.
Yeah, that's a
but
very
it's
good
still
one.
for teens
Yeah.
and for kids, and you can watch it as a kid. And it's like
The dude gets gunned down at the end of the Matt Dillon. Spoiler alert for The Outsiders. Matt Dillon gets gunned down.
Yikes.
a lot of those films are like never-ending story too. You know, where it's like they didn't realize at that point that like they didn't have to. They didn't pander to kids in the way that they like tried to dumb down.
They held their hands.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even at certain points, I think they didn't hold their hands because that was just what the story called for. Where it's like, yeah, you know, in the book, the kid gets shot. So, yeah, he gets shot. Sorry,
No.
kid.
Well, can't wait
But,
for
like-
Sonic 3 to gun down that one.
Yeah. Can't wait for to see where Shadow goes. I'm an alpha gamer.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, no, I think that that's also part of the reason why there's been this shift in just the vibe of children's media.
Yeah.
When you look in the past, it was like they were making serious movies. They were just marketing it towards kids because they were based off of kids' material.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like it's kids' media, so it's for kids. Does that make sense?
Do you think it's a response, like, you know, the whole thing? It's kind of similar to the video game situation where kids grew up playing video games, violent, and then there was a big like video games are bad, and then you know now that we are becoming to the age, not that we have kids, but we're becoming to the age, or at least this is at least how I feel. I'm not generalizing anything, but where I'm like I would let my kid play violent video games to a degree, but I would also like have context for him of why these things are violent to a degree. And do you think that that's why it's the same situation where in the 80s you were showing kids all these violent or more mature themes, and then as those kids grew up they were like, well, it was kind of fucked up that we were watching this stuff as kids, so we're going to make it more, you know, friendly, and then it kind of just kept going back and forth.
I think that is only one part of it, however. Like, yes, there absolutely is, and this argument has been made at in like an actual academic level that like violence without consequence, even in PG-13 movies, still is a negative portrayal of violence.
Right.
Like and you compare that to say The Outsiders, where somebody gets shot, they die. You compare that to like Inception, where people are just spraying bullets and nobody like you don't even see a drop of blood, you know, like stormtroopers.
Yeah.
But like I think another part of it too is now I think when something gets popular, it comes with imitators, but like those imitators now have the same level of success. Think of The Giver, for example. The entire aesthetic of The Giver is completely ripped straight from like The Hunger Games or Divergent. But that's the movie adaptation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing like the book. And none of those visuals are even really described in the book at all. But for some reason, they thought, oh, well, because this is for teens and kids, it's
This is
like
what it has
we
to
have
look
to frame they need a frame of reference in something else. It's like, yeah, you could also just adapt the book if you weren't like, you know, a troglodyte. I don't know. And
You
it's
had
like
critical thinking.
Yeah.
mean,
Like, think, for example, like a book that I don't think could ever get adapted anymore because I don't think that its actual content would be acceptable or considered for children would be something like Hatchet.
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's like the torchbearer of
Fights
four
a moose,
kids.
survives a tornado,
Yeah.
has to like
I mean, even just the premise of kid gets lost in the woods and has to survive is really dark for a kid's book.
I think that most parents
what
would
a
probably be
book.
like, we don't want
It's a
our kids
banger
watching
of a
this.
It is a banger, yeah.
And it's
And
like,
it happens again.
Did I read Hatchet 2? I think I did read Hatchet 2.
anyway, that's, small little rant of mine.
No,
No,
that's
yeah,
fair.
I get that.
Well,
Well,
I
it
think we agree
also
here at the table.
it kind of brings up ironically bring up Hatchet because it just reminded me of one of the other topics that I wanted to cover because they kind of go together of just like things that can't be adapted anymore. But like Holes, I feel like was like a
Holes-
really dark kids book.
Holes was adapted.
Well, no, I know it was, but
But
like
you couldn't
can-
like remake it?
you
or
could
if
not
you
really
tried to?
remake it in the same way because it is
Because
kind
the first
of a
one's
messed
already
up.
perfect.
With that too.
The first one is perfect. I think that might be my favorite adaptation.
Is that where Shia LaBeouf peaked?
No, Fury. Absolutely not. I know you're joking. I'm still going to defend Shia LaBeouf.
He's gonna take
Absolutely
the bait.
not. Absolutely not.
Isaac and
Like I said, we're in the deep end.
there's no fishing rod between Isaac and I. It's just a piece of
me, and
fishing
Connor,
line.
me and Connor in a phone booth right now, just slugging it out. It's an old school heavyweight fight.
Anyway, make your point about Holes.
I mean, no, that was pretty much it because you already
That
made
was
the
good,
point where
that
it's just like just remind me like Holes. I think of like Hoot was also like a kind of really
Hoot.
Yeah.
Hooped. What is hooped?
Hoot.
Oh, hoot.
Do you know what Hoot is?
I never read the book, but I do know it.
What is hoot?
So it is this. Let me see if I can get this.
I'm
plot
assuming
remembered.
it's something about an owl.
Yes. It is basically a bunch of kids prevent angry, greedy corporation from killing a bunch of owls.
Oh, so like Stardew Valley.
Oh, it's the Arnold, Hey Arnold movie.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But like again, very like kind of it's a book for kids.
Oh, it's Final Fantasy VII.
Don't take the bait.
Funny stuff.
Got him. I told you.
It's a good bit.
We're in a heavyweight fight.
I never played Final Fantasy VII. So
That's literally the plot of Final Fantasy VII is kids.
ecoterrorism. Yeah.
Kids are trying to destroy corporations.
But
It's the monkey wrench game.
but yeah, I mean, like it's just like kind of a really kind of grim for kids book, and the movie is also very like kind of not grimy, but just like that kind of like wow, this is for children. Like,
Do you think there's not enough drama for children?
Considering stuff like
that's
this,
a whole other podcast.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I was gonna
I
say-
think
We're
we've run
we're
the
running
adaptation.
We're pretty long on this one
Yeah.
already.
I was just saying, like we're talking adaptations. We want to talk about kids media. I could talk about this for hours, which is
I could sit
Kind of
down and write a paper
weird.
with CPA or not CPA, Chicago style.
yeah the MLA
citation
MLA format.
No, MLA is for beginners.
I'm more of a APA guy, but whatever.
I do remember my first APA paper, and I was like, "Fuck this shit! I'm
I'm,
going back to MLA."
I'm more of a my sources
I
are
was
made it
like-
the fuck up.
I was like, immediately withdraw.
Or one of my favorites is the philosophy books where the source is it was once revealed to me in a dream.
Yeah. That's my favorite source. I skimmed the Wikipedia article.
Yeah.
Just believe me, Wolf.
All right, boys.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, what are your guys' favorite adaptations of all time? Whether it's this was a one-to-one in my head recreation of it, or a B, it's just better than the original source material.
No Country for Old Men would be
Yeah.
number one on that list for me.
I
I
get
think
to do that. Both.
The Shining would probably be number two.
I feel like I almost have to say Hunger Games.
I have a lot.
Because I feel like, to me, like, I remember I got out of that theater and I was like, wow, that was
Just the original one, or are you talking the series as a whole?
just the original one.
Okay.
The Hunger Games.
Okay. No, it's a very important.
Yeah, no, it
distinction,
is. It is a very important
because the
distinction.
third one goes off the rails, and
Yeah.
I remember being like,
It's a real,
"What
like,
are we doing?"
it's a real ramp where, like, the first adaptation was really, really good and then Catching Fire, I'm like, and they did Mockingjay. Like, oh.
I remember the exact chapter. I was like, "I'm done with this book."
But,
Like, I'll finish it, but I'm done with this.
young adults in a nutshell. But yeah, I feel like that to me was like the like, wow, they adapted this in a sense where I know this is exactly like the book while also being its own thing,
Yeah.
presented in a way that makes it easy to digest in a media format. Good stuff.
How much do you think was serviced by the fact that it came first compared to the other like dystopian YA, or even like
well, the
It's the
content
OG.
of the book being good has nothing to do with.
no, I mean the
adaptation.
movie itself.
Yeah, I mean that is just the fact that I just think they did a good job with the source material.
There's actual
don't think it has-
talent in the production of the
like,
Hunger
there's-
Games.
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
some
Like,
really
There's
good.
good acting in it.
Yeah, there's good acting. The set design was
Yeah,
incredible
yeah.
for. You
Even
know,
the newest one. Did you see the newest one?
Not yet.
Ballad of Song and Fire. Even that, I remember talking to James about it, and I was like,
He loves that.
I actually kind of had a good time with this.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't my favorite movie of the year, but I was like, this is. I could see another like
costume design was incredible
Yeah,
because
I
you
could
could have
see
made
another
the
3 more Hunger
people look
Games
really
movies.
stupid. Yeah, no, I think it was just good. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it was like the first of that wave of
You just
No,
enjoy
that's
it.
strong,
true.
independent woman
I
fights
do-
against corporations as a 16-year-old
Choose
who's
girl
ugly
boss.
but also attracts all the men.
You know, the good thing about Hunger Games is that the story translates really well in D&D.
Yeah. So mine would be Harry Potter.
I'm about to start throwing hands.
No, we're all in the deep end,
He's
boys.
not gonna take that bait.
You guys just witnessed the dissolution of the Hit Play podcast. Thank you for being here for our final episode.
If we were anime right now, there'd be like that twitching, like
Yeah.
that, like, yeah.
Okay,
You'd
if
have,
you
like,
want
a
to talk
steam
about
over
good
your head.
adaptation, anime has a lot of them.
oh yeah.
In my
I mean,
opinion.
almost every single anime is an adaptation
I was
of a
gonna say
manga
that's
or
kind
a
of
light
like-
novel. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of the
That's kind of given.
that's the gimmick.
Well, not to say that they're all good.
No, but I'm just
No,
like,
but-
yeah, of course, anime has a lot of good adaptations when 90% of them aren't original to begin with.
No, that's understandable. Yeah, Sword Art Online.
What? Oh, you said something about an anime. I don't know.
All right, you know what?
Log
Mine would be
Horizon.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of great moments in Harry Potter where I have sat down and been like, "This is great."
Mhm.
Like filmmaking.
Yeah.
Absolute cinema.
Specifically, I remember we were watching it, James, in Order of the Phoenix, when there's that flashback when Voldemort is taking over Harry's body,
Mhm.
and like there's flashbacks of like everything that makes Harry great, and this is why you're a piece of shit and I'm the GOAT
Mhm.
because you don't have this, MFer, and I'm like, that's the essence
Peak.
of the books, like that. Somebody knocking on our door?
Yeah.
It's weird. That's good. Should I go check who it is?
There's probably an Amazon package of mine.
Yeah, it's probably an Amazon package.
Oh, is it?
I'd leave it. It can wait.
Okay.
If they knock again, we'll go look.
Okay. Little caught me off guard. Nobody ever knocks at our door except for you. I was like, I had to be like, wait, you are here, right?
I'm a ghost.
And then another
You lose your train
one.
of thought.
No, I think for me it's Harry Potter's
Yeah.
1-1.
That's fair.
I mean, for one, a book that is better or worse than the movie, The Godfather, I think is like
I need to go read that. Actually, that would be another.
Exhibit A. There's a lot of shit in the book where you're like, why is this in this? Like, there's a lot of shit that's literally shit. And then there's some scenes where you're like, oh, that's pretty good. But the movie is just, I mean, it's a completely different.
Yeah.
It's a completely different
Different
entity.
beast, yeah.
It's the GOAT. But-
Absolute cinema.
All right. Any
That might be
final
my
thoughts?
favorite meme. I love Martin Scorsese.
That's such a good bet.
No, I have no other final thoughts.
Yeah, I got a final thought.
Yeah.
If you guys want to hear us talk more, should check out our alien.
I was like, wait, where are you going with this? Are you,
I expected you guys
plugging?
to like start laughing because it was such a terrible transition to the plugging, but
Well, expectations is death of reality, Connie. Go watch our Alien Isolation podcasts. We upload
Episodes.
every Friday.
Let's
yeah,
plays.
they're episodes. They're episodes. They're let's plays.
Let's plays, not podcasts.
Here, podcast.
Okay.
Follow us on
I'm not taking
Instagram.
that one. I'm getting out of the water now.
Hitplay.pod. Follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
We post clips.
Yes.
We also post them on YouTube as well.
Yes.
They're very funny.
Make sure to hit the bell.
It makes them laugh.
It does make us laugh.
I laugh.
We're a little bit narcissistic. We won't lie.
I'm very narcissistic. I've never said I wasn't. Yeah.
It's true. We are all men on a podcast.
See you guys.